Hi, Eric Burleson, your congressman from Southwest Missouri, and I'm here in Spokane with a great business owned by Jeremy Erickson, Messiah Locomotive. Tell us about your business. You and your wife started it not too long ago, right?
Yeah, right. So what we did is we started to build locomotive wheel sets. There's just not very many of them out there in the country, and a lot of them have closed down. So I saw an opportunity there to be able to make a good thing in the marketplace for the rail industry.
Tell me about the rail industry, the impact that, your location being in Southwest Missouri, how important rail is for Southwest Missouri.
Yeah.
And really for the United States, because I know that we went through supply chain issues in just recent years, and the rail industry is often overlooked, but it's one of the most important, critical aspects of our...
Right, it really is. Being here for us is centrally located, not that far from the East Coast, the West Coast, even Canada. And Southeast, we do a lot. Like I said, we go all over the country selling these things. We can do more with less. So each rail car, you can average 3 to 4 semi trucks off the highway. So it relieves congestion from the highways. If we could, we're greener. I mean, rail is 0.07% of greenhouse gas emissions, trucking 17%. So we're definitely the cleaner and greener, and we can do it a lot better and haul a lot more with a lot less.
So we're here. I'd love to see what it is that you guys do exactly and how you do it.
Okay. So as they come in, they'll get wore out underneath the locomotive. So when they get wore out to a certain point, 1 inch of rim thickness, which is this part right here.
Okay.
When that gets to 1 inch, then they have to replace the wheel. They can go a little bit narrower than that, but that's usually if it's a...
And that's this thin piece right here.
This area right here.
So you would cut that off and then put another one on?
So basically what we'll do is we'll strip this completely down to a bare axle, requalify that axle for the bearing surfaces for the electric motor, and then press that back on. And then these wheels will come back new, like that one right there.
Okay.
And then we'll put a new wheel plate on it, and then it gets sold back out as a reconditioned wheel set. And so for us, all this stuff's recyclable. So we really have no waste here. Everything goes back to the metal scrapyard.
And how many times can it continue to come back in and then be sent back out?
Usually 20 years, can be 5 years.
20 years before you
Replace
refinish
this.
it or replace it?
Replace it,
Okay.
yeah. Turning it would be reprofiling this tread right here. That could be a once a year thing.
Okay.
It could be a once every 2 year thing. So depending on the defect in it, it would determine how much you have to take out of the wheel to make it a new flange.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I don't think most people realize that.
It's very niche.
It's like, if I had to replace the wheels on my car every year, that would suck.
Yes.
But so the railroad industry is literally all of these axles, they're taking them off and having them at least
if they have
turned every year.
A lot of places do, especially rail cars. Locomotives, and they try to do a lot of it underneath the locomotive already. Okay. And like I said, we have a process where we go on site and we'll turn this right underneath the locomotive and retread this.
Okay.
So, but then there's other customers, they'll send them to us just like this, and we put it in our lathe out back, and we'll turn it in our lathe.
So that you do the turning process and you also do the replacement.
Right.
Can we see how that process works, how the turning process and the replacement work?
Yep. This right here is what we call a tread lathe. So they'll go ahead and put that wheel set, and it's got dead centers in it. They'll bring it in, they'll set it in.
So then these will press in to kind of squeeze together. It in.
And then those 4 jaws, they grip onto the outside of the wheel.
Okay.
They basically give it the torque it needs to turn.
And then it kicks out like in these spiral.
Yep, it'll kick out and like that, and then in chips and all kinds of stuff.
Can I grab one of these?
Yeah, they're pretty sharp.
It's like a little slinky.
It is. It is. And when they're hot, oh my goodness, they will cut and burn. So
yeah.
But that's how a lot of it comes out. And then once they finish, you get the tread down to the size that it needs to be, and you have to match both axles. Both wheels have to match.
Okay.
So you can't have one bigger than the other, or else
then the train would be.
Then it spins. One goes faster than the other.
Right.
So that's this process. It's a separate process that we do on those locomotive wheel sets. So from here, that would take care of that. That wheel will be done, be ready to go back out into service.
And this is what you call the turning process.
Yeah, the tread turning process.
Okay.
Yes. And so once that process is done, we'll put it out, and then it'll go back out and get reused underneath another locomotive.
Until it can't be turned again anymore.
Right. You
and
keep
then,
doing that until you can't turn it, and then you have to go to the next step, which we'll show you, and then where we demount and get it all down and put new plates on.
Awesome.
So as they come in wore out, and we can't turn them down anymore. So what we'll do is they'll come in, that wheel press over there, what that does is it demounts, and then it will pull the gear off also. And then once that's completely stripped down, it'll be like a bare axle like this.
Okay.
And so once it comes in as a bare axle, ready to get worked again, what he does here is he'll find defects. If there's defects in the body, when I say the body, that's in between those raised seats on the end of it. The process he's doing right now is called roll burnishing. So he rolls that till it gets to 3.5 to 5 microns per inch. This actually takes 3 to 4 hours to do this whole thing. This is what takes the longest of the processes. Over there on these are called wheel bores. He'll get the measurement off of that, and then he'll subtract 9,000ths of an inch. So these wheels, when they press onto those axles, they have to be 9,000ths of an inch smaller than that diameter on that axle. And so when you press it on, it presses on with 95 to 145 tons of pressure. And that's actually what seats them onto the axle. So you'll notice this has the same kind of finish to it. It's called a cat's tongue.
Finish. Okay.
So when we mount,
So
what
it
it does.
can grip.
Yes, exactly. So when you look at it underneath like a microscope, it's peaks and valleys. So when you lubricate it with the mounting fluid that we use to lubricate, it captures that oil, and as it presses on, it lays all that down, and it allows it to bite as you're pressing on. And then when you hit your 95 to 145 ton, and then it'll go ahead and bite and stay on. So that's the thing about locomotives. It's almost like aircraft. They can be infinitely rebuilt. A lot of locomotives out there running are built in the 50s. They just keep rebuilding. Keep putting new wheels under them.
So let's talk about some of the regulations that are of a threat to you. We've got some of the EPA standards on locomotives, what their emissions have to be. I know that California has a standard. They're trying to impose higher restrictions on the emissions.
Yeah. That what I have seen, even in times past from working on the locomotives in California, is them requiring, when they buy a new locomotive, when a railroad gets a new locomotive, it passes their emission standards. The old one runs perfectly fine. It could go somewhere else in the United States to another user and help the other user upgrade their fleet to get better locomotives. But no, California makes you cut the crankshaft in half. So it's actually, they make you actually destroy a perfectly running locomotive
before it leaves the state.
Before it leaves the state.
Wow.
Yeah, and they've been doing that for years. I mean, I think all that started back in the early 2000s. They would do that.
Wow.
A company that I did work for, Pacific Harbor Line, they were buying they were getting new upgraded locomotives. They were what they call a gen set. So they'd have 3 smaller engines in them, and they were newer locomotives. Well, they had older locomotives built from the late 60s, early 70s that ran fine. They were really good, really good units. But in order for them to get their government funding and use them in the state of California, they were required to cut the crankshaft in the old locomotive before they could sell it. So they had to destroy a locomotive in order to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Take it out of the marketplace.
There's a lot of government bureaucrats that don't understand basic economics, and that, to me, that's the broken glass fallacy. Like this idea that, if we make them destroy that, then we'll create value.
Yeah.
We will encourage the market to buy more.
Right.
In the end of the day, you're just destroying wealth.
It is because, again, that locomotive could have been traded into the company that made the new one.
Yeah.
And turned around and rebuilt and resold to somebody in Missouri that needs one.
Early on, I think it's the first 2 or 3 months, I met with industry leaders in the rail industry and learned about an issue where passenger rail, Amtrak, is able to, through law, get a right-of-way on track that they don't even own.
Yeah, right.
In other words, they get to tell another business that they have to change their schedule and whatever they're planning to ship and accommodate
Yep.
the timeline of Amtrak.
Right.
For me, that seemed a little silly, and especially at a time in which being from an area where I don't know anybody that rides Amtrak.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
and then B, we went through a period where it was hard to get things on the shelf, where it's hard to
Yeah.
to have an efficient supply chain.
Yeah.
And to hear that this was something that was an impediment to the supply chain is the reason why I sponsored this legislation
Yeah.
called the Freights First Act, which is basically that anywhere that you're near a hub or a rail yard, someplace, a port
Right.
that's important for logistics, that the passenger rail shouldn't have a right of way
Right.
going through a hub or a port or
Yeah.
a place of logistical importance.
Exactly. They have, from my understanding being in the industry, is that, the federal government subsidizes Amtrak. So it's kind of a public-private partnership. So,
Wouldn't it be nice if they subsidized you? Or all of us,
would.
right?
Yeah, everybody, exactly. At least you'd feel like your taxes that you pay, you're getting something out of it, you know?
Right.
But there's, so the BNSF, you notice, it's largely Amtrak running on BNSF, it's in our region and out west. And I don't know, but that's been around, for years, even before Berkshire Hathaway owned them. So they had kind of that, what do you want to say, that, love-hate relationship, and that was the case, a lot of the BNs was whenever there was a passenger train coming, they had to get out of the way. So that's been the case. And when when you're stopping the train, I mean, there's a lot of time involved to stop it and start it. So when it's moving, you like keeping it moving until it actually has to stop.
Yeah, stopping it and
Yes.
getting it moving again takes a lot of energy.
It does. It really does. Again, being a free market guy, I don't believe in subsidy. I really don't. I mean, it's going back to, what we talked about with emissions and, building rail that, building it by the mile, getting paid by the mile. Well, I feel like the auto industry and battery powered EVs are that. I feel like the only reason a lot of them are building is because of the subsidies. There's just a lot of that out there.
Right.
There's just got to be a better way for Amtrak. I think it's viable, but a lot of people in the industry, they scream that it's not going to be if it's not government funded. Well, find a way. Make it viable.
Right. It'll never be viable.
Yeah.
Until you cut off the government funding.
Right. And because somebody will make. Because again, go
If
back
there is
to
a
the free
market for it,
Yes.
there's a market for it, people will pay.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Well, Jeremy,
Yes.
thank you for showing
Yes.
us your awesome
You bet.
business.
Thanks for coming. We appreciate you having
Thanks
me
for
coming.
employing so many in Southwest Missouri and
Yes.
being a gem of the Spokane community. We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.